Hi everyone.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming for conversations around mental health by Acciohealth, our startup. I'm Smita. I have my partner Samantha here.
Hi, hello.
A spoken word poet Anu. And Dr. Rekharani will be joining us on video. The whole point of having this little session, informal session, conversation, is to discuss the importance of health, to discuss the importance of mental health as a part of health, and to be able to kind of see the red flag that certain symptoms are throwing up, because they have serious effects on our health, our longevity, our quality of life. We want to begin by telling you personal stories that convinced us to start this company, to go this way. The first story I want to share is that of my uncle. He died very young. He died when he was just 42, and it was a very sudden death. It was a brain hemorrhage is all that I remember. But later, and I'm too young to remember the details, but he suffered from eating disorders. He was extremely obese, so his blood pressure one day gave way. He used to have hallucinations, so he was on a bunch of medication that made him sleep through the day. But what I remember of him is that he was a beautiful, lovely man, one of the most affectionate people, respectable people who was leading life as respectably as anybody in society would. He couldn't complete his graduation, so he used to work in a government shop, save up for his children, buy gifts for us, nieces and nephews, from whatever money he was making, take care of his parents, and lead a life. So one, that he passed away too early, and two, that after he passed away, his family, his wife, who eventually convinced his parents as well, my grandparents, to slowly erase him from our family's history. So in any wedding card, family tree, you wouldn't find him mentioned. Not even on his own daughter's wedding card, wedding invitation. This was all done supposedly to save the family from the stigma of somebody who was suffering from hallucination and was on, certain treatment, certain psychiatric treatment. The second story I want to share is that of my grandfather, my Nanaji. He was and still remains one of the physically fittest and mentally most agile people I know. His physical stamina were, for trekking, for long drives, was something of a legend in the entire family, extended family, everybody who knew him. Unfortunately, he started suffering from Parkinson's disease for the last 8 to 10 years of his life. It not only restricted his movement, he became completely bedridden. And so of course he was going through a lot of trauma. He couldn't move. His speech slowly faded to a stutter, slurred finally. And he was mentally agile till the last day he lived. But the effect that it had on his family, and in turn again on him, is something that doesn't go down very well with me. One is that the entire family lost confidence, because one person whom they thought was the epitome of strength got bedridden. The second thing is that they used to, they would finally try and shift the blame on him, to be able to blame somebody. And I remember, people yelling at him, asking him to try and walk, asking him to show some willpower. And those things just made his life much more difficult, along with the disease that he was battling. And he passed away. He passed away recently. The other 3 stories that I want to talk about are the stories. So these are the stories of heartbreak that made me sit up and think of mental health. But there are 3 stories of hope There is somebody I know who battled OCD, somebody who battled depression, and somebody who battled anger issues, the quality of life, the family issues, everything was going really bad for all of them. I can like bunch it up together and say that the families together were kind of facing the issues. But they reached out for help, they got the right help, they underwent treatment. The person who was suffering from depression actually underwent treatment for 5 years. But at the end, they got better. They are healthy. They are people like you and me, or in fact, are people that we would aspire to be like. They have healthy families. Some of them have great children, and they are living life. So from heartbreak to a wholesome life, we wanted to cover this distance. So the dream with which we build, and we are building Acciohealth, is to build this bridge. And going by the definition of health, I want to talk about how WHO defines health, especially mental health. WHO says that health is not complete without physical, mental, and social health. The second thing is that mental health does not just mean that you do not have certain symptomatic disorders. It means that you are strong enough, you are mentally strong enough to be able to take on the daily stresses, traumas that life throws your way and bounce back. Right? So on that note, I want Samantha to take you through the rest of what we are trying to do.
Thanks, Smita. So how like Smita was explaining to you how she had positive people, the same way even in my family, I saw my brother and my cousin really deal with anxiety, deal with stress because of a personal loss that had happened. And we both of us were sort of sharing these discussions and all, why this is not happening. Because in my family, we actually have a lot of people from the field of medicine. But they were aware that, my cousin and my brother are going through this, but somehow were still so skeptical of taking them to a doctor. And in my mind, it was so ludicrous because I'm like, if they had a busted ankle or if they had kidney problems, you wouldn't even think twice before you took them to a doctor. It would be stupid of you, and why aren't we encouraging it? And sort of when me and Smita were discussing, we sort of realized, how deep-rooted this stigma is and why people don't, seek for treatment. So when we were doing a bit of a research, we saw the mental health policy that came up. It clearly shows that it's not just me and her. There are a lot of other people who are suffering from this. So 1 in 5 people actually suffer from a mental illness. This could be either they're not even aware that they're suffering from a mental illness, or they're aware that they're actually not going ahead to seek treatment. And not only is the supply side, the patient's a problem, even looking at the doctors, you have one psychiatrist within 3.5 lakh people. That just shows that, not only doctors are willing to sort of consider this stream, people also don't want to go to them. And the worst part is, I think, when it comes to the government. So 0.6% of your healthcare budget is only being spent on, mental health. It shows that, the stigma, how deep-rooted and how badly we are actually in need of this mental health today. So we kind of thought that maybe developing nations like us, probably we are the ones not spending so much money on mental health. But when we actually saw developed nations like US and UK also, the story is slightly better there. But the kind of focus and the kind of focus that you require on mental health is still not available over there as well. So you see about 5% of their healthcare budget still being spent only on mental health. You see people with major anxiety disorders, clinical depression, still being one of the major things affecting developed countries like US and UK. And I think one of the saddest statistics in India is that WHO says that we are probably one of the most depressed countries in the world, with just about suicides being the 3rd largest cause of death. So not only has it gone from you can't take care of yourself, you're just suffering from an illness, it has taken drastic steps to actual loss of life. And I think this is what sort of evoked in us that maybe it's not only about dealing with mental health, that today if you don't deal with it, it has far-reaching ramifications. Okay, one of the other things that we, when we were doing our research, we sort of saw is that a lot of people just say, okay, it's a mental health issue, you deal with it, it'll get over in a couple of months. But it's not as simple as that. It has a lot of effect on your actual physical well-being. So let's say today, if you're suffering from something like, an anxiety disorder, it doesn't stop with just being a mental state. It sort of manifests into asthma, IBS, you have vascular diseases, and that leads to a lot of problems going on later in life. So if you're not going to, get yourself healthy, go and get yourself diagnosed and check yourself, it may pass in a few years or so, but the ramifications on your health are going to be very extensive. Okay, so given all this research, given all our personal stories, what do we actually want to do? So the main thing that we want is, in the near future, is to have mental health as very accessible, very convenient, and be very trustworthy while we are providing this to you. And not only that, firstly, by making you guys aware that there are these kind of illnesses out there, how do you exactly go about diagnosing them? How do you go about treating them? And how do you actually, not have to deal with this entire stigma and cost that is surrounding that? So we've got like a three-pronged approach that we would say. We're trying to increase awareness, mainly around mental health disorders, how to make diagnosis much more streamlined, how to make it much more accessible to you, and the last part is the actual therapy, which we want, to encourage doctors and psychologists to come with us to give a more standardized healthcare plan for the patients. So the first part that we are looking at, as I was telling you, is awareness. So right now what we have mostly is, a good repository of content that we have. We're touching upon various mental health issues like anxiety, like depression, stress, which occurs in most people. What we're planning to do is make you aware that these disorders are there, that you may not think, you may just, in the back of your mind be like, okay, whatever, I'll deal with this however I want to life. But how do you actually go about dealing it in a scientific manner? How will actually help you improve your life going forward? So that's the thing. So please do go to our website. Please do. We're available on Facebook, LinkedIn. We're available on Instagram. Please do have a look at these content. Please do share and read this content because like the kind of word we've had with a lot of people, the awareness level is extremely poor, and whatever we can do to actually increase this would be great for one and all. What we're next very soon planning to do is on the diagnostic part of it. We've sort of spoken to a lot of psychologists, and our very in-house psychologist, Dr. Reva. She's actually got a couple of tests which we'll sort of digitize and put them on the website. So that will actually help anyone to take those tests anywhere. It'll be really accessible. You can just take them, give it to us, and we'll help give you a good diagnosis. And you can, with that diagnosis, at least be aware of what kind of struggles that you're going through. Okay, thank you so much. We just have a short clip. Dr. Rekha couldn't be here, unfortunately. So we've just got a short clip from her sort of stressing on, what are the issues that we face, and mainly she's captured a little bit about stress. So please just...
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Rekha. I'm PhD in psychology. Today, I'm going to talk sound mind is analytical. As psychologists, my session is we should talk about stress and anxiety. Just like physical health, it's very important. Simply stress and anxiety are normal for everyone. Regular level of stress and anxiety directs and motivates us to solve our day-to-day problems and challenges. But drastic increase in our stress level occur due to serious life problems such as breakups, serious financial problems, peer pressure, adjustment problems, losing someone dear, exam pressure, stressed parent-child relation, academic problems, burnouts, prenatal depression, continuous failures, and many more. In these situations, our low confidence and low self-esteem make us feel helpless. It is important to understand that facing stress, anxiety, and mental pressure is like facing any other health problem. Just like we do not hesitate to see a doctor when having cough, cold, or flu, we must not feel guilty in accepting our mental illness or reluctant in taking professional help. Like we have thermometers to measure our body temperature, similarly, we have psychological tests to determine our level of stress and anxiety. There are a number of free and paid tests available. They are user-friendly and self-administering tools. Now, there is a serious question. Why is there a problem in asking help? Most of us do not talk and sometimes are not ready to accept our mental health issues due to the social stigma attached with mental illness. It is important to understand that these social taboos will only worsen our condition. Secondly, I believe prevention is better than cure. The present mental health care scenario of our country is not satisfactory. There is an acute shortage of mental health care professionals and lack of required infrastructure. Therefore, it is important to become aware and take care of our mental health hygiene. For example, regular yoga may help our mental health in the same way as gym benefits our physical fitness. Sound mind is important to face the challenges of life. It's very important to think, reason, and understand clearly. In the moments of stress, pressure, fear, or exhaustion, it's difficult to think straight. Sound mind is considered as an asset, so always take care of your mental health. Now, there are some suggestions from my side. Many of our illnesses are psychosomatic in nature. That means these illnesses are caused due to mental stress or anxiety, but gets transformed into physical health issues which we remain unaware of. So, we should always take good care of our mental health. We should always talk and take help from a reliable, genuine, and a professional person. A genuine person or a counselor will help and train us to solve our problems in an effective, healthy, and realistic way. Thank you. Have a cheerful and healthy mind.
So that was the psychologist reaching out to all of you to seriously consider your mental health as a part of overall health. And before we go on to our poet Anu, who has a couple of really amazing poems to read out today, perform today actually, and a personal story, I just want to make a little announcement. There is a brochure and a test kept on your chair. There are a few pens available here which you can borrow. You can fill in the test and leave your email ID on top, and we'll send you the test report soon. This is a WHO test, and this will help us improving further how important mental health is as a part of our overall health. Now I invite Anu, whose poetry I love, to read something for us.
Okay. So the first piece I have for you is called Hair. Can I stand up?
Yeah, anyway.
By the time I finish telling you this, my fingernails may have already dug an extra line into my palms. My fists would be hidden behind my back and no one would see them tremble. My fingertips would tingle with the need to find something else to do. Anything. Stretch, curl, wriggle, pretend this table is my piano, pretend anything. Play around with anything as long as it isn't my head. Because the moment they go there, you will find more hair on the floor than you will on my head. If you look closely enough, you would find one too small to call a strand. It used to rest on my eyelids. Not every strand ends up on the ground. The ones that I have taken out from the roots meet the most disgraceful end, then never left alone. always dragged across the never-ending bumpy road that is my skin, like corpses that no one ever thought deserved respect. As a child, I used to make them race past the raised hair on my arms, and against the heat of my skin, they felt cool, moist like balm. Every follicle felt like silk. I would trap them between the pages of a favorite book and call them bookmarks. Hours later, I would cry, force myself to lock eyes with the girl in my mirror, tear my gaze away from her face to her hairline, comb out all that I had left, comb till it shone, bunch it together until it could cover all the parts that had nothing but skin left. Tell myself, be positive on me. Always be positive, even on the days when you had more bald spots than hair. I would press the sharpest pins I had against my scalp to make sure they stayed in place. But there were days when even the pins wouldn't help. On those days I would lie. This is hair fall. Stress-induced, I'm a type A personality. This is nothing. You see, being a psychology student meant that sometimes you could get away with talking about things you knew very little about, only because the person sitting next to you knew so much less. That never stopped them though. They would laugh. You're 16. What would you know about real stress? Meanwhile, in the privacy of my bedroom, a strand would vibrate between my thumb and forefinger and fall to the ground. Freddie Mercury would keep me company crooning, I'm going slightly mad. I thought I was the only one. My mother thought so too. She would raise her fingers against my scalp, hoping against hope the invasion would anger me enough to stop. She tried everything. She was desperate enough. She tried everything but getting help. Therapy is for mad people, she said. At age 17, I saw the picture of a woman whose sandy blonde hair looked just like mine. There's only so little of it left. The word written right next to her was written in bold black letters spanning 2 pages. Trim, co, tip, low, mania. Tried that. Held that magazine to my chest like the gift that it was, because finally, what I had now had a name. By the time I'd finished telling you this, I may have had a bad day, or a great one. Some days the only thing that matters is that for the past 5 weeks, I haven't felt my predator fingers hunt through my scalp for the most vulnerable strand. There are days when this admission brings me pride. There are days when it makes me fear my next relapse. By the time I have finished telling you this, I will remember the woman who gave my condition a name. I do not remember hers, but her face is the face of my guardian angel. By the time I have finished telling you this, I will want to be that face, someone else. Thank you. So, I'd like to introduce myself, and I'd like to give you a disclaimer. At some point in this talk, my back is going to give way and I will sit there. I have slipped this, so yeah. So, my name is Anu Elizabeth Roche, and I am first and foremost, before anything else, I consider myself a spoken word poet. I performed this particular piece here as a troupe member of a group that is now called Mental Heads. We are a spoken word group that talks specifically about mental health issues from our own experiences. Okay, we have our own beatboxer, we have our own rap artists. Okay, we have one guy on board who's a filmmaker, so we have a video that's releasing today. And what binds us all together is our experience with various mental health conditions, and second is our desire to stamp out stigma. Because a lot of us have suffered, whatever we have suffered, it's because of stigma, it's because people have not allowed us to talk about what we have. Alright? So I will get to what we do in a while. First, I'd like you all to close your eyes. If possible. Close your eyes. I'd like you to imagine this scenario. Imagine you have an injury. Alright? It could be anywhere on your body. It could be the back of your head, your arms, legs, whatever. Anything. But imagine that this injury is not deep enough yet to be life-threatening, but it sure is making your life a lot harder. How many of you would take help immediately? Can you raise your hands while having your eyes closed? Okay. You take help immediately if you had this injury. And from a trusted source, right? Great. Now imagine your family and friends see this cut or this injury or whatever and say, don't take help. Alright. Imagine your dad is telling you, hey, this is not a big deal. Your mother is telling you, look, some self-control and some discipline will make sure this wound disappears, will make sure it doesn't bleed, will make sure it doesn't spread. And let's think about your friends. Your friends think you are imagining things. Alright? They think, it's all in your head, you're imagining, you're making things up. And eventually you will have a disease. What would happen to that injury? I'd like you to open your eyes now. What would happen to that injury?
It will worse and obviously get very soon.
Exactly. How many of you think this train of thought is dangerous with regard to physical injuries? Okay. We all think this kind of thought is dangerous. Yet, we live in a society that chooses to take mental health conditions and brush it under the carpet like it doesn't matter. This, despite scientific evidence that mental illnesses like PTSD or anxiety or depression can actually cause significant changes to your brain activity. Despite facts like this, despite evidence like this, we are told that this is just in your mind. That self-control, discipline, will help make this better or will make this disappear or that this does not exist. And we live in a society that takes teenagers and tells them you're too young to be dealing with any problems. We live in a society where we tell men and women who suffer from this, yoga will definitely help you. Only yoga will help you. Only prayers will help you. Only control will help you. Okay? We call people who attempt or commit suicide, we call them cowards. We call people who cannot get out of bed because of depression lazy. We literally take disorders, we take illnesses and identify them by stereotypes. OCD becomes a hand-washing disease, right? PTSD is characterized by your dramatic symptoms. And because of that, we reduce people who suffer from this to a stereotype rather than an actual person. I will start with my story. I started exhibiting signs of PTSD when I was 12 years old. I was sexually abused as a child, and I blocked, for a major part of my childhood, I blocked that memory. And it got triggered when I was 12 years old. The first thing I did was go to my parents, or at least go to my mother. And she dismissed it. She thought this wasn't that major a problem and said, keep quiet, auntie, we don't talk about these things at home. And since then, over the next 7 years, my condition triggered other conditions. I started having trichotillomania, as you must have guessed from the poem by now. I started having vaginismus, which Dr. Rekha was talking about psychosomatic conditions. Vaginismus is a psychosomatic condition that makes sex hurt, which means I cannot have sex or I cannot have penetration without it hurting like hell. And as per my therapist last week, I have anxiety and depression so severe, it's a part of my personality now. My parents took years to consider any of these as problems. And even when they were confronted with the fact that I have trichotillomania, they decided to take me to a dermatologist to sort it out, to sort out the bald spots. Literally, they were looking only at the symptoms rather than at the cause. And why was that? Because in my father's words, no one would marry a girl who had a mental problem. You see this, there's a little bit of a vicious cycle going on here. Okay, we don't, if we are in a society that doesn't talk about mental health, we silence people who want to talk about it or who feel they have something. We minimize what they say. They wind up not talking about it. They wind up getting worse. As you've seen in my story, if we had maybe tackled the PTSD head on, I would have probably, maybe I would have had trichotillomania, but it wouldn't have been triggered to the extent that it was if it hadn't been for the fact that my PTSD was left untreated. Alright? And because of this vicious cycle goes on and on. Our ignorance makes sure that they don't seek help, makes sure that it gets worse, makes sure that it gets to a point where they have too much on their hands. They don't know how to handle anything. Alright? And meanwhile, we carry within us our truths and assumptions, believing them to be true because we don't allow people to tell us otherwise. Do you see a pattern here? Do you see how silence is the main culprit? That is why I chose art. That is why I chose poetry. That is why many of us who have mental health conditions and become artists, become poets, become painters, become storytellers, take up art. Because art provides us this safe space. It provides us a space where we can talk about anything. We can talk about issues we weren't allowed to talk about when, as people, we are allowed to talk about as artists. I can tell you, most poetry gigs that I've gone to have established themselves as a safe space, have made sure that their patrons, that their poets can come up to that stage and literally bleed themselves out. Alright, and a safe space